And purports by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The means of livelihood of all persons, namely production of grains and their distribution to the prajas, was generated from the thighs of the Lord's gigantic form. The mercantile men who take charge of such execution are called Vaishyas. Purport. Human society's means of living is clearly mentioned here as Visha, or agriculture, and the business of distributing agricultural products, which involves transport, banking, etc. Industry is an artificial means of livelihood, and large-scale industry especially is the source of all problems of society. In Bhagavad Gita also, the duties of the Vaishyas who are engaged in Visha are stated as cow protection, agriculture, and business. We have already discussed the human being can safely depend on the cow and agricultural land for his livelihood. The exchange of produce by banking and transportation is a branch of this type of living. The Vaishyas are divided into many subsections. Some of them are called Kshetri, or landowners, some are called Krishana, or land tillers, some are called Tilavanik, or grain raisers, some are called Gandhavanik, or merchants in spices, and some are called Suvarnavanik, or merchants in gold and banking. The Brahmanas are the teachers and spiritual masters. The Kshatriyas protect the citizens from the hands of thieves and miscreants, and the Vaishyas are in charge of production and distribution. The Shudras, the unintelligent class of men, who cannot act independently in any of the above-mentioned activities, are meant for serving the three higher classes for their livelihood. Formerly, the Brahmanas were given all the necessities of life by the Kshatriyas and Vaishyas because they had no time to spend making a living. The Kshatriyas would collect taxes from the Vaishyas and Shudras, but the Brahmanas were exempt from paying income tax or land revenue. The system of human society was so nice that there were no political, social, or economic upheavals. The different castes or Varna classifications are therefore essential for maintaining a peaceful human society. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovishtam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadameyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Yuda Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pachanine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyata Deshatanine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. So, Srimad Bhagavatam is written as the Amala Purana, and how we understand it is that it's meant to exclusively and in much detail glorify the personality of Godhead. So sometimes when reading verses like this, naturally one may ask, why are we hearing and speaking about something like the Varnashram system? Something which on the face of it can seem so mundane as it pertains to our material designations and qualities. And actually, Srila Prabhupada comments on Rupa Goswami's teachings in the Nectar of Devotion, and he really emphasizes that devotional service, Uttama Bhakti, is free from all designations. And this is rooted in the understanding that our devotion to Krishna is not actually bound by our varna or our ashram, our social or occupational duty, right? That the essence of bhakti or devotional service is independent of material duties or the material systems like Varnashram system. We see this in the verse that Rupa Goswami writes, Anya Bilashita Shunyam Jnana Karma Dhyana Anukulyana Krishnanu Shilanam Bhakti Uttama. The translation is, when first-class devotional service develops, one must be devoid of all material desires, knowledge obtained by monistic philosophy and fruitive action. The devotee must constantly serve Krishna favorably as Krishna desires. So, Jnana Karma Dhyana Jnana refers to speculative knowledge, and karma in this verse refers to ritualistic activities or duties. And this also encompasses those prescribed in the Varnashram system for the various Varnas. So in this verse, Rupa Goswami is really emphasizing that bhakti is independent of all these social structures. However, though the Varnashram system can on the face of it seem quite mundane, it's actually of incredible significance to us. Because the natural tendency of a neophyte devotee like myself is to see something like the Varnashram system as a rung in the ladder to pure devotional service, and an unnecessary rung that sometimes we feel like we can skip. However, it's very, very important, and Srila Prabhupada often and very, very frequently reminds us of this, very significantly here in the purport of verse 7 from chapter 3 of the Gita. It's a really nice purport. Instead of becoming a pseudo-transcendentalist for the sake of wanton living and sense enjoyment, it is far better to remain in one's own business and execute the purpose of life, which is to get free from material bondage and enter into the kingdom of God. The prime svarta gati, or goal of self-interest, is to reach Vishnu. The whole institution of Varna and Ashram is designed to help us reach this goal of life. A householder can also reach this destination by regulated service in Krishna consciousness. For self-realization, one can live a controlled life as prescribed in the Shastras and continue carrying out his business without attachment, and in that way make progress. A sincere person who follows this method is far better situated than the false pretender who adopts show bottle spiritualism to cheat the innocent public. A sincere sweeper in the street is far better than the charlatan meditator who meditates only for the sake of making a living. So we can hear in this purport that Srila Prabhupada is actually making this point very, very strongly. A sincere person who follows this method is far better than the false pretender who adopts show bottle spiritualism to cheat the innocent public. And so, therefore, yes, the Bhagavatam is written exclusively and profusely to glorify and understand the personality of Godhead. And the Varnashram system, although appearing mundane, actually does not deviate from that objective, because its purpose is to regulate our consciousness and in that process uplift our consciousness in this yuga. And to go one step even further, it's not a tangential system which is, just to aid our bhakti, but actually the very factions of Varnashram system, as described in these verses, constitute the social body of Godhead. Right? We've heard in these verses how the Brahmanas are the head, the Kshatriyas are the legs, the Vaishyas are here described to be the thighs or the waist, and the legs are described to be the Shudras. And so all these parts of our body are important, and all must be respected and valued in order for us to have proper function. So similarly, drawing parallels to a functioning society, all varnas and each ashram must also be equally respected and equally valued, because there's a high degree of interdependence. A functioning society cannot exist without each of these varnas having equal respect. So the purport starts with Srila Prabhupada drawing comparisons between the Vedic conception of Vaishya and the modern representation of a Vaishya. He mentions how large-scale industry especially is the source of all problems of society. Here he's clearly referring to capitalism and consumerism, which is progressively getting worse. And he writes about how it's actually an artificial means of livelihood. But why is large-scale industry an artificial means of livelihood? Why is it false? Any guesses? Why does Prabhupada say this? Yeah, why is large-scale industry artificial?
Because it's largely cheating, like someone who is making a lot of money off of being like the head of an industry or like a CEO, will be making a lot of money compared to people who are actually working. So this is like a flipped system, like the Shudras are not being taken care of properly. And so therefore, if someone, Vaishyas, Kshatriyas, Brahmanas, or Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, they're supposed to be taking care of Shudras. So it's largely cheating. So therefore, it is completely artificial way of making money.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Yeah, Prabhupada often speaks about how this world is the cheaters and the cheated. And yeah, exactly. You've hit the nail on the head. Large-scale industry is an artificial means of livelihood, and it's false because it has a attritional effect on our consciousness. It degrades our consciousness. It breeds overindulgence, overdependence. And this is not by any fluke, but actually it's by design. It's created in such a way. One may ask now, okay, why is it created in such a way? Why does this happen? Well, actually it's described that in this age, in Kali Yuga, every ashram has a defect. Right, like the defect of like the Varnashram, the Vanaprastha ashram is that they don't retire, they don't go into the forest, they stay attached to family life. Once they've raised their kids, it's time to become free childminders for their grandkids, and so on and so on. It keeps going. So like the defect of the Grahastas in Kali Yuga is that they don't give charity. And actually this is the influence of Kali. It's to hoard wealth, right? When the personification of Kali Yuga asks Parikshit Maharaj for shelter, Parikshit Maharaj instructed Kali to go to 4 places: brothels, liquor shops, slaughterhouses, and casinos. However, in the illustrious kingdom of Maharaj Parikshit, these 4 places were seldom found. They weren't very present because of how pious his rule was. So he requested one other place, and that place is where all 4 of these places can be found or included, or all 4 of these places sometimes are born from, and that is where gold or wealth is hoarded. So that is a negative influence of Kali Yuga. That's how that defect is manufactured within the Grahastas, that they don't give charity. Hoarding wealth it's a pervasive illness. And so that's why large-scale industry is created, or it has this nature of trying to control and subdue society, trying to really squeeze and juice as much attention and wealth out of society as possible. Like if we compare today to just 60 years ago, as a population we own twice as many cars, eat out twice as often, and actually our very existence is completely dependent on these commodities, these little things in our hands which have somehow become integral. I reckon that if we were to set ourselves a challenge of not touching our phones today, we'd probably experience some withdrawal symptoms by lunchtime. I know I definitely would. So we've had waves of industrial and technological revolutions, but are we any happier? Are we more connected? Are we more susceptible to self-realization? Actually, quoting from a recent study, scientists have concluded that compared with their grandchildren, today's young adults have grown up with more affluence, but less happiness and much greater risk of depression and assorted social pathology. Now, if we were to quote from Srila Prabhupada's purport of 1926 of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada writes, "The productive energy of the labourer is misused when he is occupied by industrial enterprises. Industry of various types cannot produce the essential needs of man, namely rice, wheat, grains, milk, fruit, and vegetables. The production of machines and machine tools increases the artificial living of a class of vested interests and keeps thousands of men in starvation and unrest. This should not be the standard of civilization. And so this is why Srila Prabhupada is making the point that it's an artificial means of livelihood, because actually everything that we need to survive is already given by Krishna. He's making the point in this purport that the very core essential needs that we have of, rice, wheat, food, these things, by however much endeavor, cannot be manufactured in a factory. A grain of rice from completely nothing cannot be manufactured without the assistance of nature, without the assistance of the Supreme Will. But still there's starvation, still there's unrest. So we have an abundance of technological advancement, but actually what we're experiencing is a real famine of food for the soul, of food for our own need of self-realization, our own need of understanding our nature. And so this subconscious starvation that we're each experiencing is very dangerous, because it breeds a mindset of conquering over nature. When we have a deeper lacking, a deeper sense of incompletion, insecurity settles, and then this nature takes over of trying to control, of trying to become a conqueror. And the very fabric of the Varnashram system, which is that each ashram, each caste, each varna should be equally respected and equally valued, starts falling apart, because we're not able to coexist. And so the cultural rule around society becomes every man and woman for themselves, do whatever you think is best, don't worry about the consequences, extract as much as you can, extract as much enjoyment, and then kick the problems into the long grass and see what happens. And so sadly, when the general consciousness for everyone is each for themselves, then the concept of God becomes a distant thought, and less and less of a consideration. And so this is what happens. We're experiencing a lacking because of this tendency to cheat, as Cha was mentioning, this tendency to really hoard wealth. And because of this deeper lacking that we're feeling, we have this desire to manipulate, dominate, to overcompensate for this insecurity. And so that is why large-scale industry is an artificial means of livelihood. That is why it's not sustainable. It doesn't give real sustenance for the soul. And that's why it's an even deeper point, and even more important point, that today's grahastas, vaishyas, are very conscious of dedicating the fruits of our activities to brahmanas and to the movement. Because, as we mentioned, industrial society is designed to distract us from this motive. And that's its aim. And so for a grahasta, especially in this day and age, there are many opportunities to generate wealth and fund a family. There's so many vocational jobs. There's so many programs out there to make money. But to that degree that there are ways of accumulating wealth, to that degree we must be very specific also of how we function in society and how that function is connected to our spiritual development, right? There's so many ways of making money, but there must also be equal amount of ways or equal endeavor put into connecting these means of living to our spiritual advancement. Otherwise, what's it all for? Otherwise, it's not actually karma yoga, right? Yoga or yuj means to connect. So if we are really endeavoring to do karma yoga as grahastas, as vaishyas in society, then how is our work connected to God? How is our family life connected to God? How is our social impact connected to God? And so there's a massive difference between being dutiful and being spiritual. And actually it's the connection between our actions and our spiritual intentions that is the key to self-realization. That's the connection there. And so this is why Krishna says to Arjun, Yad karoshi yad ashnashi, yad johosi dadasi yad tapasyasi konteya, dat karushva mad arpanam. He says, whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or whatever you give away, and whatever austerities you perform, do that as an offering to me. He's not doing this because Krishna needs something. Krishna's not lacking in anything. He's not a beggar, but actually it's for our own safety. And that's why in a verse just before that he says, Yagyartat karmano nayatra loka yam karma bandhanaha. Work done as sacrifice of Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, this very work, becomes the bondage, becomes the cause of our bondage in the material world. And so, I think naturally, especially in like Hindu communities, there's a massive misconception that if I'm being dutiful, that if I'm, taking care of my family, if I'm providing, that makes me the most religious person in the world. That's my duty, because Krishna in the Gita says to do your work, and so I'm following that. But actually, that's a huge misunderstanding. That's not enough. There has to be a conscious connection between our work and our offerings. So this is how Vaishyas and Grihastas can successfully avoid the trap of an artificial means of livelihood. They can successfully perform karma yoga and use the varnashram system to uplift their consciousness and serve a meaningful function in society. And we mentioned earlier about how there's a key significance on offering respect and value to each ashram, and so the duty of the Vaishyas is not to give charity just for their own sakes, but it's also to offer financial protection for the Brahmanas and the movement, as Srila Prabhupada mentions in the last verse of this purport, how the Brahmanas actually had no time to make a living for themselves because they were so busy in their own services. And this is where the exchange comes. The Vaishyas and the Grihastas offer financial protection, and in return, the Brahmanas offer spiritual protection. The movement offers spiritual protection, and in that way, there's an exchange. So, these were some thoughts that we had on today's purport and today's verse of the role of Vaishyas in society and the difference between different means of livelihood. Perhaps we can pause here if anyone has any comments or questions to add. Yes, Radha Govinda Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for the very thought-provoking class. I was thinking you were talking about large-scale industries and stuff, and it's very well established out there. And often when we grow up and we start working and stuff, we somehow fit into that, and then it's just a question of how we keep our spiritual life going somehow by connecting it to Krishna consciousness. I was wondering if what your thoughts are on maybe trying to establish an alternative way of how things can function, and something a bit more practical, like I know there is a system of farming and all of that, but it doesn't seem practical for everybody. So I was just wondering, because it seems like we're still supporting that large-scale system by working in it, so I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Prabhu. It's a really nice thought and question. So, just so I understand, I'll reiterate what you're saying. Essentially, it's large-scale society is completely large-scale industry and manufacturing and whatnot is completely prevalent in society, and just by being part of that society, we are in some way contributing towards it and progressing it. Now, alienating from it is not really possible. So, what do we do as devotees? How can we function? I think so. My understanding of that is that there is actually, it's very difficult for us to completely separate ourselves from society and try and live this ideal life of a proper means of livelihood, as Srila Prabhupada is explaining. But the best we can do in any given. Shishivada Gokulananda ki jai, Shishi Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ki jai, Shishi Gauranitai ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai. That the least we can do in these situations as devotees is try to use our occupation, our social position as an opportunity to propagate Krishna consciousness, and in this way try and balance the effects of this large-scale industry. Because it's one thing being part of it and being part of this system and contributing to it, but if we are able to use our position to try and better the position of Krishna consciousness, or use whatever skills or whatever material assets that we kind of gain from these positions to propagate Krishna consciousness, better the movement, use these skills to contribute to the manor or any other place of worship, then that is, by my understanding, that is the best thing we can do. And recently, actually, I had a small switch of careers. I used to work in technology, and I had the incredible opportunity to try and spend some time working in a devotee project, which is the Avanti Schools Trust. And I was like, last few weeks were my first few days in office, and I was completely blown away because there were people walking around in Tilak, there was Bhagavatam posters on the wall. It's an incredible place, right? And so if we are able to use our skills in service and sincerely pray, then those two endeavors combined, Krishna does offer opportunities, Krishna does offer ways in which we can add to the world. So
I was just going to mention another thing as well, just like sometimes we see in the Jewish community, and they're all connected within each other, like they don't rely on anybody else for anything. If they want to build they're in the Jewish community. If they want to, buy something like gold or anything they want to do, it's available. And I was thinking it might be just nice to have like a hub within devotees where anywhere you want to go, it's all available within the community, so we're supporting each other.
Absolutely.
And in the long term, it grows into a bigger hub or something like that. Anyway, the opportunity is there if someone wants to take it up.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. One day. Thank you, Prabhu.
I was just wondering your thoughts on, like, Prabhupada often says that, like, Krishna consciousness, this is all that's needed. Actually, like, one quote was coming to mind, like, there is no deficit of anything except a deficit of Krishna consciousness. But I just wonder how relevant that statement is in our kind of modern age. And actually, as devotees, if we should be even looking at Krishna consciousness as like this kind of band-aid, like this one size fits all. Because of course, like everyone in this world has different conditioning. And so I don't know, to me, in my consciousness, it doesn't sit right that we as devotees are kind of maybe thrusting an ideology onto jivas who are just conditioned, Yeah. So I guess, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Thank you for your very thoughtful question. One thing that I like to remember when like these kind of thoughts or these subjects are discussed is that every living entity is seeking happiness, Anandamaya Vyasa. Like by our very constitution, we are experiencing a lacking of connection, experiencing a lacking of fulfillment of that love, a reciprocation of that love. And that search, that insecurity is the driving force behind everything that happens in the world, right? Everything that's happening is because to some degree, to some way, each person is feeling some form of lacking, of a deeper source of fulfillment. That's why vices like, what we all know how many several vices there are, how many conflicts there are. There's power struggles, there's ego struggles, and these have existed since the beginning of time. So everyone is searching for a deeper understanding of themselves, and next step is that they're searching for a relationship that gives actual true fulfillment. We have this beautiful wisdom and this beautiful secret that's been given to us by our magnanimous teachers, that actually this deeper connection, this deeper fulfillment can be experienced through the process of Krishna consciousness, through the process of hearing and listening and chanting the holy names of Krishna. Now, it's important to find the balance because, you've spent a lot of time preaching at universities, and we've served together in that service. And we've seen that people come to KC Sulks for different reasons. Some come for the free prasad, some come for the holy name, some for kirtan, some because they have questions. And so Krishna consciousness has something to offer for everyone. It's not that we're trying to force anything specific onto each and every person, but actually we're offering an opportunity for people to feel some form of connection in whichever medium, whichever way they deem serves that purpose. So it's about making the opportunity available. And then people will receive it in whichever way their conditioning allows them to, or their commitment of faith allows them to. But as devotees, our duty is to be present and make it available, which you've been doing for years. Thank you. Srinivas Prabhu.
If it wasn't for the Brahmanas and the Vaishnavas, the society would become very degraded very fast.
Yes.
So the Brahmanas and the Vaishnavas are actually helping people come to the spiritual platform.
Yes.
It takes a long time because of conditioned nature.
Yeah.
Material world, this is karma bhumi. But we have to push ahead and just depend on Lord Chaitanya and the Acharyas. And like Prabhupada said, he was preaching in Gopur, reading Giriraj Swami's book. And Prabhupada is trying to get a temple within the university campus. At the time, Krishna Maharaj didn't have much to do, so he was trying to get Prabhupada to move on. Prabhupada told him, I have my plan, your plan, and Krishna has his plan.
Yeah.
So we just have to push ahead and just see what Krishna reveals. He has his plan. At this stage in our situation, we have to become more neutral because with the world situation, people are becoming more disturbed because of the. We should try and help those who are open for mercy, and don't waste time with those who are not open for mercy. And that's I read in Krishna telling Rukmini when Rukmini was going to fight with Krishna and Krishna defeated him. At some point, Krishna was going to kill him. So Rukmini started crying. And then Lord Balaram came with the Yadus. And Lord Balaram enlightened Rukmini by telling her that we should be fixed on the knowledge of the soul and don't be affected by the bodily platform. And someone who's not behaving properly like Rukmini, one should not pay attention to them. Because our time is very short, so we just have to help those who want to be helped and pray for those who are struggling.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Srinivas Prabhu. Okay, I think Persian Prabhu had a point to mention.
I'm referring to, it's a lecture given by Bhaktivinoda Thakur in 1869 about the Bhagavatam. Of course, it's the month of Bhadra.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the per name. And he says here, bearing in mind this is in 1869, it's a forecast. He says, this Bhagavatam allows to call upon Vyas, Narad, as Shakti-Avais avatars of the infinite energy of God. And the spirit of this text, referring to the Bhagavatam that is, goes far to honor all great reformers and teachers who have lived and will live in other countries. Of course, it's being spread throughout out the thing. And then he says, the Vaishnava is ready to honor all great men without distinction of caste. Interesting, yeah. And then because they are filled with the energy of God. See how universal the religion of the Bhagavad is. It is not intended for a certain class of Hindus alone. It is a gift to man at large in the whatever country, born whatever society bred in that the Vaishnav, the Vaishnavism is the absolute love binding all men together in the infinite, unconditioned, and absolute energy of the God, who may reign forever. May it reign forever for this whole universe, in the continual development of the purity and exertion of the future heroes. You know, the future heroes he's referring to, people like Prabhupada, and who will be blessed in accordance with the promise of the Bhagavat, with the powers from the Almighty Father, Creator, Preserver, and Annihilator of things. Of course, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the demigods, everyone. It says here, but it's here to bind everybody together under the as the who is the preserver and annihilator of all living beings in heaven and earth.
Thank you, Prabhu.
It's a very thoughtful and a deep statement.
Yes.
And that's in 1869.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So, just before we head off for breakfast, I just wanted to also take a moment to just speak about the very special personality that is Haridas Thakur Prabhu. Today is his disappearance day. And he's a very special personality in our lineage as Gaudiya Vaishnavas. He's our Namacharya. So although Haridas Thakur was born in an outcast family, he loved the association of devotees very much, and he chanted nearly 300,000 names a day. It's about 192 beats, 192 rounds. And after finishing this, he would go out and sing and dance and preach the glories of the holy names. So in those days, being an outcast was a very limiting and very, very poor situation. And he would actually be condemned and rejected entry to so many temples when he would try and enter. And so he could have easily said, why should I follow this path? Why should I do it? You know, like nowadays, if we have a poor experience in a restaurant, like we never go back there. But Haridas Thakur was being rejected from the very places to which he wanted to dedicate his life in service. And he was being treated unfairly. But still, he wanted to stay. So Haridas Thakur was someone who was really experiencing the essence of the sweetness of the holy names in his sadhana. Someone who was really experiencing the bliss of Krishna's pastimes in his chanting. And you know, in this state of consciousness, who can convince anyone to change when someone is so deeply engrossed in the holy names? It's like if you pour 1 spoon of salt into a cup, right, and you try to drink it, it'll be completely unpalatable. And now if you pour that same spoon of salt into a bucket, you may still taste it. If you pour that spoon of salt into a vast pool, an ocean, then actually you won't even notice its presence. So the obstacles in our lives are like these spoons of salt. And our consciousness is like this cup of water. The deeper we go into our spiritual endeavors, our spiritual conviction, the less these obstacles will sour our taste. And so Haridas Thakur was someone who really personified this. Someone whose depth of absorption was so deep that no matter what obstacles were in front of him, we know so many obstacles in Haridas Thakur's life that were present. His beating in the 22 marketplaces, or various attempts by the devotees to take him off the path of Krishna consciousness. Or not devotees rather, but society to take him off the path of Krishna consciousness. But maybe today we can really pray for this, to have some depth of absorption in our own sadhana, so much so that the obstacles and the turbulent nature of society and the material world doesn't overcome us. One thing that can help us do that is the Srimad Bhagavatam. Today is also, it's a triple header today, it's also Bhadra Purnima. And And it's said in verse 13, chapter 13 of Canto 12 of the Srimad Bhagavatam, that if one on the full moon day of the month of Bhadra, one places Srimad Bhagavatam on a golden throne, gives it as a gift, he will attain the supreme transcendental destination. And Srila Prabhupada was very supportive of this. He wrote a letter in 1977 saying that I want every respectable person to have a full set of Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita in his home. Because, we spoke about how the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas and Vaishyas constitute the social body of the Lord, but the Srimad Bhagavatam is actually non-different from the deity of Krishna. The various cantos also represent the features and the body of Krishna. So gifting the Bhagavatam is like gifting a deity of Krishna. It's very special. And then lastly, I also wanted to mention that today is the appearance day of His Holiness Bhakti Charaswami. Today is his Vyasa Puja, a immovable pillar in the history of ISKCON, and a staunch and very exemplar follower of Srila Prabhupada. So, today maybe we can pray to follow in Maharaja's footsteps by always remembering the example of Srila Prabhupada, his teachings, and like Bhakti Charan Maharaj's example of innovative preaching with his Abhay Charan series and constructing the temple of Ujjain. Maybe we can all also pray to try and intelligently broadcast the movement across the world. So thank you so much today for being here with us, and all the devotees for sharing such wonderful thoughts. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.